Welcome to the Lead Defend podcast, a show designed to help you grow in faith and leadership as you navigate the stages of young adulthood. We address important faith topics and provide practical life tips, helping you build up your faith as you engage a changing culture. Now, here are your hosts.
Hey, welcome to Lead Defend Podcast. We are so excited to be back for this season.
Finally.
We don't really know what season this is, honestly. We just keep rolling with it.
Put a question mark on it.
Speaking of, Lead Defend Conference is coming up quick. It's March 2nd of 2024. Man, that's going to be here before we know it.
It is.
And you can get more information at leaddefend.org.
Yeah, it seems like that time of year always sneaks up on you. It's like holidays are here, you're having fun, drinking hot chocolate, and then bam, spring semester's back, and it's time for Lead Defend.
Unless you're not having fun during the holidays, and that would be sad.
Man, downer.
Yep. But anyways, we got Jeremy Dixon with us. Jeremy's the young adult pastor at Cross Church up in Northwest Arkansas. He's actually at the Pinnacle Hills campus, which is there in Rogers. But Jeremy, you got a lot of responsibilities. So start this way. Tell us about who you are and why you do what you do.
Man, that's a big question right there. But, man, I'm thankful to be here with Brock and Ryan. Love both these guys, and it's an honor to be with y'all today.
When I got here, we were both middle school pastors.
That's true.
Oh, wow. So have you leveled up or leveled down?
I don't know. It depends on who you ask.
Yeah, ask Brock that. And I'll just echo whatever he answers to
So
that.
Brock's a campus pastor now at First
Yeah.
Baptist Rogers, Olive Street campus, and Jeremy's doing young adult ministry.
Yeah, so I came here actually a little over 8 years ago, originally to Cross Church through School of Ministry. So we have a 1-year residency program, which, yeah, if you're looking for something right out of college, that's a great thing to do if you're looking to get into ministry. So I came up here to do that. Was with our Fayetteville campus, working with our C3 ministry. Ended up kind of being over all of freshman ministry, and that's when I really just fell in love with reaching college freshmen. And so Ryan, I know that me and you could talk a lot about that.
Yeah, that's right.
But what I learned from that season, and this is leading into me being now in young adults. But what I learned from about a college freshman is, and many of you might be about to walk into that or are in your freshman year, but so many things are new. You have way more freedom than you ever had. Way more open, so it doesn't matter. Maybe that means that, unfortunately, maybe you grew up in a Christian household and now you're open and you're going all over, down Dixon Street if you're at U of A, and you're open to a lot more things than you never were because you have a lot more freedom than you ever had before. But also maybe it's for somebody who they grew up in an atheist home. They're more open to being invited to a service or to a small group or to a conversation about Jesus. And I just love that openness of a college freshman. And so that's kind of where I just learned, man, such an opportunity to reach that demographic. And so I did that for a year, then came up here to Pinnacle Hills campus, Rogers. That's where I met Brock, and did student ministry for about 3 years. And crazy long story, crazy thing that the Lord did. But I was a young adult. I think I was 25, maybe 26 at the time. And there just wasn't a whole lot going on for young adults at our church. And God just did a lot of things in me, brought back a lot of that period of time that I was helping with C3 and helping with college freshmen and even my own life in a lot of seasons of transition. And even in my own personal story, I've had a lot of seasons of transition that I've gotten right, and it's been incredible. I've had a lot of really bad seasons of transition that I've gotten really wrong that led to a lot of destruction in my life. Yeah. So just those seasons are so crucial of what are you going to do in those seasons of transition. Doesn't matter if that's in between junior high and high school or high school and college or college young adult years, or maybe it's engagement season or having your first kid. I mean, all these different seasons are super impactful. And that's when I came to a campus pastor and said, hey, what are we doing for young adults? He said, well, you want to lead a ministry?
There you go.
You want to start something? And so that was almost 5 years ago, which is pretty crazy to think about. So then it's been a lot of a wild ride.
And now you lead a ministry, part of which is called The Social.
Yeah.
And so it's a young adult gathering on Tuesday nights, a couple hundred young adults at different stages of their young adulthood. And
actually, so The Social it's a focus on 22 to 32.
Okay.
So again, I know a lot of different young adult ministries all over the country, and even how they define young adults is way different.
Sure.
Who's in a room in a young adult ministry is way different, but how we do it.
Does anyone really know?
Nobody knows. And what I've learned is the older you are, the longer you keep to the term that you're a young adult.
Yeah, you're just trying to try to hold on to it for as long as you can.
That's why when I first was in student ministry up here, we had a thing called young adult ministry, but the average age was like 43.
Sure.
I was like, I don't know about that.
Younger adults.
So Jeremy is saying, if you're a 43-year-old listening, you are not a young adult.
You're not.
anymore.
I don't consider you a young adult.
All right.
So yeah, you're not. I'm hanging on.
I feel that.
I hit 31 this past year,
Same.
and there's a lot of me that doesn't feel young anymore.
So we say it's a focus, especially the social. So it's for single young adults. The focus is 22 to 32. And so even like here at Cross Church, we have a great college ministry. Like I said, I used to be a part of C3. So if they're in college, I'm like, hey, you're welcome here, but we have something better for you. Go down 25 minutes. C3 is going to be incredible. If you're 36, if you're a 43-year-old, we have something better for you somewhere. So like, let me help you get plugged in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we have the social for young single adults, that 22 to 32, that demographic, and I'm also over young married adults.
Yeah.
And which also means I'm over the in-between. So like I did 14 wedding ceremonies last year.
Wow.
So I did one Sunday. So there's a lot of premarriage
Now,
counseling.
go ahead and
do you
admit. Do you use the same text? Like, do you use the same wedding?
I really let them kind of pick a little bit.
Oh, okay.
But if they are like, hey, I don't care, do whatever, it's going to be pretty similar.
So my question, is this like a full service deal where you pair them up and marry them? Like this is a hitch situation?
It depends on how much they pay. I'm just kidding.
Okay.
No, man, I wish I've kept track of how many like wedding and marriages have come out of the singles ministry.
Yeah.
But it's a lot. But I'll also say, because of how we have the ministry structured, it's also really hard. It's exciting. It's encouraging. They're launching into they're going to raise a family that's following the Lord. And that's a big part of what I try to do is in this season of transition, man, how can we pour into you the best so that your future, you pick a spouse differently, you raise kids differently.
Yep.
Yeah.
They have kids differently and generational changes. But the hard part about that is that means two incredible, let's just say like this past Sunday.
Yeah.
I married two of my best small group leaders, a guy small group leader, girl small group leader. They're married. They're transitioning out of the social. So that just happens fast.
Yeah.
And so especially last
Bittersweet.
year, I had, so 14 weddings. That means, 28
of your
leaders,
best leaders.
I'm losing.
So as you're trying to invest in those single adults, you do have in mind some of them are going to get married, some of them not, but all of them have a next step, next transition.
100%.
What are some of those key things you're trying to invest in them? What are those, core disciplines that maybe you're trying to teach them as you prepare them for whatever that next step is while they're a young adult now, something else coming forward?
Yeah, I think that's why I love young adults. And I think in a way, even going back, Ryan, to like that freshman year of college, of how valuable that is. What I've found is young adult years, it's a lot longer freshman season, right? Like you're a freshman adult is really what it is, now maybe you had a great college experience and a lot of great friends, and now you're new to a place, especially talking about Northwest Arkansas, tons of people from out of state,
Right.
Don't have friends here, so you're starting fresh. Or maybe you're not a believer and you're just looking for somebody somewhere, whether that's a bar or a ministry, right? And so it's really capitalizing on that season of transition. And man, how can we, number one, reach you for Jesus? And so that is why we do a Tuesday night gathering, is to be like, all right, this is the widest funnel we have. And this is our strategy, if you will, of reaching young single adults in the area is, man, we want to have a place that you feel safe, that you can find community.
Wow.
But it's all about this, is that I really think that young adults, I'll say specifically young single adults, all right, so graduating from college, have more availability than any other season you've ever had, and any other season you probably will ever have.
Wow.
You have probably more freedom to risk than you've ever had, will ever have. Some of these young adults are making real money, coming out of school, more than we'll ever see, here at this table. And they have tremendous freedom to risk, availability, like I said, but also influence. These are leaders. These are growing leaders in their companies or in their fields, and they could be huge kingdom, difference makers soon. And what I want them to grasp, and so if you are a young adult or you're approaching your young adult years, get excited, because it's not doom and gloom or like what's next. No, like it's really, really, really exciting, because even if you're single, or especially if you're single, I'll even say, a lot of my young adults, a lot of them would love to wish away the singleness, and like hey, let's get through the season fast, and I'll just wait on this until I get married, or one day when I have a family, all these things. Now, like, seize the moment now. Like right now, God can use you in your season of waiting in incredible ways.
Yeah.
Wow.
And actually, at our ministry, we just preached through 1 Samuel.
Yep.
Ryan, you helped on some
I got
of
to
that.
do a week. Yeah.
You did?
All the staff took vacation, and so I got to be there that week.
We brought Ryan in, and but I closed the series on. It was huge. I've never preached this much text. It was kind of brutal. But on 1 Samuel 17 through 31.
Wow.
Brutal. Because kind of how we did it was we did, 2
Like
on Samuel,
chapters.
2 on
Chapters 17 through 31.
Chapter 17 through 31. And why this is relevant, especially I think to a young single adult who thinks that they're maybe a freshman, or maybe you're in the middle of some kind of transition where you feel like you're just waiting.
Yeah.
And you're trying to wait on what the Lord is doing in your life to move on.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe you feel called to ministry, and now you're like, man, well, I can't really do ministry until I, graduate, college, or until I have my MDiv, or whatever you think you're waiting on. So David gets anointed by Samuel in 1 Samuel 16. Okay, then plus or minus 2 or 3 years, it's 24 years later.
Wow.
That he becomes king. That's unbelievable.
That's a wait.
That's a wait, man. And if he would have just gotten frustrated, I mean, it's pretty obvious in Scripture, different places he had a hard time, right?
Yeah.
But he learned patience. He learned wisdom. He learned how to be faithful in the fight. I mean, you have so many huge, crucial things, big stories that happen between, and 1 Samuel ends. This is what's crazy about just 1 Samuel. It ends in chapter 31. And he's still not king. Actually, still not even close to being king. Saul dies, Jonathan dies, so it's closer, I guess. But man, you can use that season, and God can use you there to be dependent on the Lord, maybe more than ever. But it's going to be a season that God can really use you, and so it's an incredible time of your life.
So we're talking about seasons and transitions. Obviously, David had that long season of waiting. Sometimes people make mistakes in transition seasons, like that they have to spend a long time recovering from.
Sure.
What are some common mistakes or pitfalls as a person enters young adult years, like they're out of the college or early workforce stage, and now I'm definitely a young adult, paying my own bills, doing my own thing. What are some pitfalls that you see in young adult ministry?
I really think a lot of them, and it's part of that on waiting on the Lord and being that awkward in between, is it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I could use a lot of different analogies of the uncomfortable, whether that's like working out and you're in the, getting ready to pop up from a squat or whatever, just that weird in-between stage. That's where there's a lot of stress, a lot of pressure. And one of the biggest pitfalls I see is instead of, leveraging this season for the kingdom, they're waiting. And they're struggling, and then in between, and you're so focused on when is this coming?
Sure.
When am I going to get a job? When am I going to get the right job? When am I going to get the girlfriend that's going to turn into the fiance, that's going to turn into the wife that I'm looking for? When is it that I'm going to get the promotion?
Yeah.
And you're so focused on when is the next when am I getting when that you become so self-centered and so self-focused that you miss out on the season that could be leveraged for the gospel, for the kingdom.
That's huge.
So I think you just get selfish and just trying to figure out who am I going to be, and which is a good thing, but you can also turn it really quick into a very self-focused thing where then you become ineffective for the kingdom because you're so focused on what can I get from this.
I appreciate that you just come straight out and call it selfish.
Yeah.
Our focus can become very inward during those times. And it's interesting because most people would say, no, I'm waiting on something, on God to work.
Sure.
But you're saying, nah, we can be really selfish in those seasons, even of waiting.
And also, what if he doesn't?
Yeah. Or what if it's 24 years that you're waiting?
Yeah, and none of those things are necessarily promised. It almost operates from like, all right, God's holding out something from me. Yeah. And kind of like you said just a second ago, if you're always waiting for when, you're going to miss now. What does God have for you right here, right now?
You might be in 9th grade, called to ministry. do ministry.
Yeah.
Like you really don't have, if God has, like David was anointed in 16, he can start living out in some of that anointing right then. Like he can trust that God has called him. Well, now it's in the awkward in between those seasons, and man, get to work now. And
Jeremy, let me give you a scenario, and I want you to coach this person through something.
Okay.
So it's a person who graduated college in, let's say, May. They graduated college in May. So wherever they're at in the year, they've got a new job in a new city. They don't know a lot of folks, and they're a young adult, and they're single, and they're just searching for what's next. What is the advice you'd give them in that season?
Man, I say get plugged in to a church somewhere.
Yeah.
And something, gosh, I could go a lot of directions here. But go talk to somebody on staff, go find somebody that can mentor you. I definitely believe in pushing people to get mentors, but I also tell people, some of the best mentors you can get is through podcasts and through books.
Sure.
And through, watching YouTube videos of people. And so go find somebody that can pour into you right off the bat, but then immediately go look at how can I be used by the kingdom?
Wow.
How can I really use this season right now? And maybe your season of singleness, maybe your season of this waiting, it could be really, really short. It could be 3 months.
Sure.
We tried really hard to try to gauge and try to track how long somebody is at the social, right? Like
what's the average tenure of a person?
We guess around 9-10 months.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Before they get a different job and move to Chicago, Dallas, New York, wherever from here. Yeah. Which we're in a very transient area too. But or they're getting engaged, they're getting married. So it's like, and that's not all the time, that part. But they are probably moving somewhere fast. And if you were to even wait 3 months, you might be a third of your way and missing out on the season that you have right now.
That's
so
huge.
Don't think I'm just going to wait. Find somewhere to get plugged in.
So what do you say to the person who hears that and goes, but exactly, what if I'm only here 9 months?
Yeah.
Why should I put down roots? Why should I seek out a mentor if I'm just, so what's the incentive to build community in the short term?
I love that question. And actually, as I've started, when I really, became a young adult pastor, I had never been a part of or seen a young adult ministry. So I had to really just try to learn and, from a lot of different places. But one area where I learned the most was actually from military ministry because of how fast and transient it is, especially singles ministry. But what I love about military ministry, and to your question, is they are super focused on finding community and getting plugged into a church fast.
Wow.
So I've watched some videos, I've read some books on military ministry, but what happens is they know for a fact, a lot of times they have 2 years at a place. So they have an advantage over a young single adult, out of college, because they know that it's short. So they're not playing around. Like they're like, all right, week 1, find a church. Week 2, where can I get plugged into this church? Week 3, how can I be making disciples here in my community? All that's happening really, really fast.
Wow.
And what I've seen is a lot can happen with somebody who's all in for the kingdom-minded, kind of person in a couple months. Yeah. We do this thing called Rise. It's like a leadership development program for young adults. And we just started another round of it last night, and I was telling them about our last class. We do it every 3 weeks. And our last class, we had 27 people go through it, 27 young single adults. One of them was really fired up, really excited. She went through the 3 weeks of Rise. 2 weeks later, she moved.
Wow.
She had no idea when she started, right?
Mm-hmm.
But even through that, it really helped get her equipped to serve, how to share her story and her, her faith. And so even in that short amount of time, and she actually helped start a new small group in those few weeks.
Wow.
Before moving. And now she's
Incredible.
now she's moved to Minnesota, and she's taking what she learned those few weeks there to help a church there. And so that's why you can't wait.
Yeah.
Because you also don't know what the Lord is going to do, and you'd rather have started last week.
Yeah. Yeah, don't underestimate what God can do in a short period of time. It sounds like what 100%. You're saying.
Man, that's an incredible word. I'm thinking of students that graduate, and don't know that they all think they have a temporary job for now. Nobody thinks when they're 25 that I'm in the job I'm going to have for the next 50 years.
Sure.
Very few do. And so in those transitionary phases, just being incredibly faithful with where God's placed you.
I mean, when I came up here right after college, I went to Ouachita, came up here right after college to do School of Ministry. I came up here with the full intention of being here for 12 months and leaving.
Yeah.
I would have honestly bet you anything that was going to be the case. Like, that's what I wanted. I actually was like, man, I've been in Arkansas for a while. I'm kind of ready to, like, get out. And so came here thinking I was for sure gone.
Sure.
Like, didn't want to stay.
Yeah.
And I've been here 8 years now.
Well,
so
give us a word of advice, because there's a lot of young adults and young folks that listen to this, but there's also a lot of ministry leaders.
Sure.
If somebody's saying, I'm passionate about young adults in my community, where do I start?
Yeah.
I'm going to start taking notes, because this is a question we're even asking right
Absolutely.
I think the first thing I'll just say is, man, you're thinking of a good thing. And that young adults, I mean, I just gave a whole thing of why young adult years are so important. So as a leader, that's why you should be reaching and should be, trying to help equip and, love on and young adults, because of how valuable they are even to your church.
Yeah.
Like, I think that you should see them as that. And so that's really the first thing I'd say is, like, hey, if you're wanting to do that, that's a very good thing. It's really hard, and why I think a lot of, especially when I'm talking about young professionals, maybe, post after college, it's something that a lot of churches are like, well, we don't have that many here. I promise you have way more than you think you do.
Absolutely.
And I mean, that could be anywhere in the state, anywhere in the country. You have way more than you think you do. You probably definitely have way more young families, young marrieds than you think you do. And all of that season is just so important. And there's a big gap, I think, in, we'll just say, the American church of now, thankfully, praise the Lord, the last 30 years, you can probably give more of a background on BCM and all that kind of stuff, but it hasn't been that long that there's been a great focus there.
Sure.
But now we've kind of closed in some of that gap, but there's a gap between you graduate college and then you're married with 2 kids in the back of a Honda Civic, and you're like, you know what, we should go to church for our kids. So how are we reaching that middle stage there? Because, man, like, that is the church of the future. That's the church of the now.
Absolutely.
Like, I mean, even now, Gen Z. I'm not Gen Z. I don't think any of us are.
Dude, it's creeping up there quick, though.
But they're in the workforce.
Yep.
Like, they're leaders, and they're motivated. They're authentic, and so, man, we got to be going.
That's right.
And what a shame if we're putting so much effort in reaching students, which we are. Praise the Lord. I think even as a convention, we do a great job.
Sure.
I think as a convention, in Ryan, we're doing a great job of reaching, college students. How are we doing after that?
Yeah.
Are we losing our focus as soon as they graduate college?
Wow.
Are we just letting them just kind of drift into nowhere? And what a shame if that's what we're doing.
Wow.
So I think as a church, we got to be just continuing to reach them, continue to pour into them. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have to, hire somebody. I think if you can, I would do it. And call me. And
Are you looking for a job?
I was about to say,
not that part. But I'd love to help you find somebody. I have a lot of people, or even just I'd love to hop on. That's one of my favorite things in the world to do is just talk about young adult ministry. So I'd love to help anybody who wants to do that.
But I appreciate what you've done, Jeremy, is you've given, like, tracks that people can run on. It's like, hey, what's next for you? Well, this could be. So engage here and do that. I think sometimes young adults are just looking for, where's a space for me?
100%.
You look at a list of small groups in Sunday schools, and none of them seem to describe where you're at.
And that's really defeating. And then what's even funnier, and it doesn't stop. So even once your church has, like, our church, we got something for you, right? But people show up, and people get so scared, even in the parking lot.
Wow.
I couldn't even tell you the amount of stories of people who come to our ministry. You can see that there's a lot of people. You see on our Instagram, man, there's a lot of people like me, but they get to the parking lot and they get scared, get anxious of, like, do I belong here? And I've heard many stories that they come 3 times, sit in a parking spot, decide I got to go, and they leave before ever walking in.
Wow.
So every time somebody comes in, it's got to have a welcoming culture. And I think even maybe you're a church leader and maybe a pastor, and even if you're a senior pastor, you have young adults in your area that you should be reaching or coming into your church. So have you thought like a young adult is there a place for me?
How do you walk that line between walking up to every young-looking person and saying, hey, you're a young adult, you belong in this, and also giving them really clear, hey, this is for you.
Yeah.
Because a lot of young adults, they don't want to be singled out for not having a natural place to fit, but they're also looking for a natural place to fit.
I think if you can find, all right, so church leader, if you can find one person, maybe that's somebody that you used to disciple and they were in your student ministry, now 6 years later, now they're a young single adult, and you're like, man, I only have one that I know of. Man, set them at the front door and have them do that.
Wow.
And that's actually how we started the young adult ministry at Cross Church Pinnacle Hills.
Sure.
And and I kid you not, it's really hard to imagine now if you've been to our campus on a Sunday morning because of how many young adults in their 20s there are now. Mm-hmm. But 6 years ago, you could look around and be like, there's 2 in here, maybe, And so what we did in those early days is, and we would go to lunch just with the, 3 of us after service. And so what we'd do is we'd scan during the service. And again, especially if you don't have many in the room, which I would say probably most churches don't.
Sure.
You could scan around the room pretty easily and be like, all right, there's somebody, or they're new, or they're here with their parents, they're visiting, or whatever reason. Mm-hmm. It's Mother's Day, really go after them on Mother's Day. And
that's incredible.
And hey, I'm going to go up to them and say, hey, like, have you been coming here long? They're like, oh, no, it's my first time. And you're like, never would have guessed. No, I know that you're new, and like, hey, there's some young adults and that we go to lunch afterwards together, and we kind of all sit here together. And, now this is 5 years into this, and we have a giant area at the front right of our on Sunday mornings that there's a bunch of young single adults. Mm-hmm. Because there's a lot of like anxiety for a young single adult who's like, who do I even sit with?
Absolutely.
Man, they got to sit by themselves.
I don't want to come to church and sit by myself. So even having a place for them that can just be a place of like comfort and safety, just that little amount of intentionality goes a long way. So if you have that one person that you can be like, hey, stand at the front door and say, hey, come sit with me.
And what I appreciate so much about what you're saying now is it's not just, hey, like the extent of our young adult ministry is getting them plugged into the social, but like there's this broader connectivity to the rest of the church as well. We can talk about like the silo ministry approach, and that's kind of where after college ministry, if you don't have young adult, well, there's not my thing. Yeah. So it does prepare them. Oh, hey, this isn't just I'm a part of this ministry. I'm a part of this church.
Yeah, because a lot of church and ministry leaders, they don't have the capacity for a young adult service.
Sure.
But to identify and give young adults a place is so valuable. Well, one thing I love about what y'all do, Jeremy, just on the outside looking in, you have a social presence, like a social ministry or social media type presence, and every young adult is checking out social media stuff before they pop in the room.
Right.
Like, what can I expect? And just knowing there are other people that are like me there.
Right.
So.
And that's what everybody wants to know is, do I belong here? And so, and that's kind of where we had that culture of, no, actually we are intentionally going after that person who looks alone and looks new. Yeah. And every church probably could find markers of how you know a new person, whether that means you have a really confusing building that people get lost all the time.
If they're looking at the ceiling when they walk in.
That's the key, especially in a big building like ours. You walk in and as soon as you walk in the lobby, you're looking up and we have writings on the wall. If you've been there 3 weeks, you never look up.
You don't even know those are there.
You don't even know those are there anymore. But your first week, you do.
Yeah.
And those are the people that you're like, all right, send a door greeter after them.
Jeremy, give us a final word, a charge to young adults, and say, hey, this would be the word I would leave you with.
I think something that even actually the Lord's been teaching me lately is, the closer you are to me, how true this is of me. And it gets used in a positive and negative kind of term and light. But all my friends say I'm like a schemer.
Okay.
And my like catchphrase is full scheme ahead.
Yep, I love that.
And so like always just like have something I'm working on. And but what the Lord's been teaching me, and I think this really pertains to a young adult who's in that awkward middle season, or maybe you're in transition. You're again a 10th grader moving to a new school. Yeah. and you're really trying to figure out how can I make the situation more fit me or benefit me, or how can the season be best for me, and you're looking too inward, I just say like less scheming, less worry about yourself, and more trusting in God.
Wow.
And so I just say like really put your trust in the Lord, and really look at how has God positioned me today to be used by Him.
Wow.
And how can I make a difference today, even if it's with one person?
That's
Maybe I think I'm called to, be a church pastor of 50,000. All right, maybe one day. But right now, how can you share the gospel with one person?
Dude, that's big. That's big. Hey, if somebody wanted to follow you, find more resources, where would they look?
Instagram, Jeremy W. Dixon.
What does the W stand for?
Wayne.
Okay.
And then it's XON, so not like the street.
Oh, well.
The social NWA is our social ministry, our young singles ministry. Jeremy D at crosschurch.com. I mean, I'll even give my phone number.
Brave man.
Brave man.
If you need dating advice, you're trying to get connected, here's the number.
Yeah.
Or if you just need somebody's number to like put on those drawings, those spam things.
Yes.
In that case, so Ryan's phone number is.
No. Well, we're going to close it up.
Yep.
Hey, this has been Lead Defend. We're so excited for the next event coming up in March, and it's going to be a good time. Thank you, Jeremy, for being with us.
Yeah, thanks, man.
It's been fun.
Until next time, this has been Brock and Ryan.
That's it for this episode of Lead Defend. To hear more episodes from the Lead Defend crew, visit absc.org/podcasts. If you liked what you heard, rate and review us on your favorite podcast listening site. Want to learn more information about the next Lead Defend conference? Visit leaddefend.org.